Hello, everyone, and welcome to Film Independent Presents, our year-round screening and Q&A series, now virtual. Thank you for joining us. First off, I'd like to thank our loyal supporters, our lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, our screening partner, Vision Media, and our media partner, Los Angeles Times. Thank you so much for joining us to chat all about Amazon Prime Video's One Night in Miami with writer Kemp and director Regina King. And today we have a very special guest moderator, one of our favorites, Carla Renata, aka the Curvy Critic. If you have a question for our panelists, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and hopefully we can get to it towards the end of our session. In the meantime, without further ado, I will let Carla take it from here.
Thank you, Brian. Welcome, Kemp and Regina. It's so wonderful to see y'all today.
Great to see you too.
Great to be here.
Yes. Okay, let's get right on into it. I'm going to start with Kemp. Kemp, my HU Bison brother. You have taken this prolific play and adapted it into a screenplay for the screen directed by my beautiful sister, Regina King. How exciting has this journey been for you?
Oh, it's been a dream. I mean, honestly, you know, when I first wrote the play, I was just talking to someone earlier today about on opening night of the play in a 99-seat theater in Los Angeles, saying to myself, saying out loud, oh man, I could die happy today. I was able to bring this story to an audience, and that audience was like 99 people in a theater on Pico Boulevard next to Roscoe's. And I had never in a million years thought that the story would connect so well and keep on moving on, and that I'd be even allowed to be a part of the process this long. So it's really been surreal. And you know, working in theater, working in Hollywood, it's rare to find collaborators, you know, who are as open and thoughtful and giving as Regina is. I mean, I'd heard so many things about Regina before I met her, and I really like, you know, usually when you meet someone and you're like, oh wow, they're everything people said they were. And Regina is a unique person in that she's like so far more than all the wonderful things that you hear about Regina, honestly, don't measure up to like who she is as a person, who she is as a human being. So this collaboration for me was also kind of like a mentorship in terms of understanding things about, you know, filmmaking and cinema and how this business works. So this has really been a surreal, almost like dream experience for me.
And I'm sure it's been an even more surreal dream experience for you because, brother, you got two major features happening while we are in a pandemic. So claps and snaps for you on that.
I had nothing to do with that. You know what? I'm happy they got finished. That's the truth. I'm happy they both got finished.
And Miss Regina, you're like a tornado that we watch touch the ground, and the beauty that nature of that force of nature brings is what you are to the Hollywood industry. And we're so happy that you exist and that you're here and that you took on One Night in Miami as your directorial debut, right? But I want to talk about your directorial process. I remember a while ago when I was doing a internet radio show over at Sunset Gower Studios, I would see you quite often coming to visit Debbie Allen. And so I'm wondering, how instrumental has she been to helping you thrive in this new lane of directing?
Well, I mean, if you were seeing me on Sunset Gower, I might have been visiting Shonda.
No, I saw you with Debbie one day.
When I was directing an episode of Scandal, and Debbie came to just, you know, just give me that sisterly director, you got this love, you know, and she didn't have to do that. But it's funny though, when you ask about how influential Debbie has been. I think a lot of directors, especially directors who were in the industry in another capacity before we became directors, how much she has inspired us because she's been doing it so well and doing it with so much energy, you
Mm.
know, and with so much love, actually. And so to to have that moment, it's so funny that you brought that up because I haven't thought about it in a while.
That's a
It
good
was,
thing.
yeah, I totally remember we had just finished like our table read for the episode I was directing, and I was coming out, and boom, and Debbie was right there. She was like, "Girl, I was looking for you," and she just, you know, went in. If you have any questions, if you anything, you know, don't hesitate to call me. And you know, there are going to be moments where you just may feel unsure, but just you got this. Just breathe through it and just rely on all of the things that you've picked up along the way. You may not have employed these skills, but they're already there. They're within you. And she just reminded me, just, you know, my journey as an actor was educating me all the while for you know, that moment. And yeah, so Debbie has been an influence, an inspiration.
I'm glad to hear that. She's most definitely she like yourself is definitely a force to be reckoned with in the entertainment industry for sure, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about you all's collaboration with your DP and your editors to bring this to the screen because it all takes place virtually, well, for the most part, in that one room. And that can be a little challenging editing wise and filming it. So can we just speak to how you collaborated with Tammy and Tarek on working that together, how to get angles, which things worked, which things didn't, which things were like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, for me, it started with an amazing script. You know, just the blueprint was there. The dialogue was the star, and it remained that for all of us. From the first moment each of us had read Kemp's work,
Mm-hmm.
and so you really, for me, it was it started from what the relationship was going to be like between Kemp and I. You know, my hope was that we would connect immediately, and we did. We did, and we were in two different cities. And Kemp was back and forth between Oakland and LA, working on Soul, and I was back and forth between Atlanta and everywhere, working on Watchmen. So we both had other projects that we were working on, but the passion that Kemp had when he had written um, One Night was very clear to me. And then meeting him, it was um, even more clear that he understood the importance of telling a story that reflected the men that we know personally, that reflected him, that reflected my son, my, you know what I mean? That was a reflection of all the wonderful things that make them who they are. And when
I
I
didn't
say
make your
wonderful,
job easy though, did I? With those 12-page dialogue scenes.
whoa, yeah, yeah.
That's what I
This
mean.
is a long way of coming to that. I gotta set it up.
I mean, because you know, because edit. I was just about to say because editing that, you don't want to miss anything. You don't want to cut anything out because everything that's being said is so incredibly important and
Powerful.
poignant to the moment. You know.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So with that, Kemp opened the film up, opened the play up when he adapted it by opening the film up and making the decision to humanize these men in a way that we immediately take the name off of them. We take Cassius, Malcolm, Jim, Sam. You immediately, after these moments of meeting each of them in their own world, in their own space, we immediately go, oh, I know what that feels like. Oh, I've been there. Wow. Even or either, wow, even they had to deal with it. So it immediately makes you go, all right, I'm settling into this, and I am investing in this very human moment that takes place between the four of them. So with that, we've already we've kind of let things air out in the beginning, so that when we're about to be in that room for the amount of time that we are in the room, um, we've invested. So we just as in production, we actually shot long takes. You know, we're doing all um, 12 pages in a take. And that was heavy lifting. That was a lot on the actors. But when we started the process, I told them, you got to know this script like a play. Even though that we're shooting it, you got to know it like a play. We don't have the money, we don't have the time, we don't have the rehearsal time. And and they felt, as I did, that the dialogue is the star. And if we lose any bit, and it's they're the ones that transport us, you know, and make you receive that dialogue. And they understood that. They understood the magnitude of that. So a lot of that lifting was there in the actors, what they were doing in a frame. And for us is Tammy and I told her that I really wanted to make sure there was movement in the frame, even if we're not moving. But I don't want the camera to be distracting. So we shot on jib arms whenever we were inside the room, and when we went up on the roof. I'd always known that I wanted it to be a handheld, just reading the scene with the fumble of the camera. I was like, oh yeah, this has got to feel, you know, energetic with the visuals. So, and Tarek was just, gosh, I don't know, Kemp. Tarek is just, he's just was a hero.
Yeah.
He even moments when I would feel like, oh my God, did I get everything? He was always like, if you didn't get something, I will call you, Regina. But I would still call him to ask him, did I get everything? And we had this, as most people know that are in this audience with film storytelling, you know, you sometimes scenes will change. That they won't keep the same order in which they were written. And because Kemp, while he is precious about the story, was not so precious with the scene order, that he was willing to sacrifice, you know, the best story that we can tell. And I think because we stayed in communication throughout the whole time, Kemp was able to come to set when he moonlighted on One Night in Miami while he was directing Soul.
Oh,
Yeah. But I just think that communication and keeping, when I would have an idea to do something slightly different, sharing it with him. And if there was anything that made him feel like, yeah, I think that's good, but you know, just be mindful of this. You know, we honored that, and you know, we were able to have that open dialogue. That it, as Kim said, it was collaboration. It never felt like, at least for me, it never felt like an imposition, and I hope it never felt like that for him.
I'm a screenwriter. I'm used to not even being invited on set. So for me, I'm just like, wait, why are you calling me? You want my opinion? It's a very, screenwriting can be a very, you know, you feel like you're at the bottom of the totem pole. So this experience was really, you know, a joy. It really was.
well, brother, you are definitely not at the bottom of the totem pole with two films in theaters and streaming at the same time. Let's just put that out there. And let's talk about the fact that, you know, this went up in 2011 as a play, right? And now
Well,
we're in
2013.
2013.
Mhm.
And now we're in 2020. The play is dealing with the same issues that we're dealing with right now.
Right.
Civil rights, past, present, and possibly in the future. Did you think that in 2020 that One Night in Miami was still going to resonate with that Black Lives Matter resonance that it does today?
I mean, unfortunately, yes, I did think it was going to resonate because we've been having this discussion for since before this night. You know, this has been a discussion that goes back to W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. You know
Mm.
what I mean? What is the best way forward for Black people in this country that, in many ways, just refuses to acknowledge and accept our humanity? You know, and for Black creatives, um, you know, it's something that I think you think about all the time, which is what, if any, social responsibilities do I have as a Black artist? Um, I'm of the mind that, like, you often hear things like, I just want to be seen as a director, an actor, a writer, not a Black director, writer, actor. And that's something I used to say a lot in my 20s. Nowadays, yeah, I want to be seen as a Black writer, because the reality is, I think that the Black experience contains all the multitudes of experience. It can be Black and it can be everything. It can be science fiction, it can be comedy, it can be Western. I think that the Black experience is the human experience, and
Mm.
it's not something that needs to be seen as a negative.
Mm.
The big difference between now and 2013 for me, honestly, is just that it's a discussion that people are having more publicly. You know, when the play came out, it was very challenging to get people to produce the play. What I would often hear was that there was a concern that the unapologetic Blackness of the play would alienate white theater goers.
Wow.
Now, the difference between now and then is that I guess unapologetic Blackness is kind of in right now, or I should at least say white people are into it. White people love unapologetic Blackness right now. I hope that artists and creatives continue being unapologetic about their art, even when white people aren't into it anymore, because it'll come again. It's not a fad. We are who we are. And I look forward to the day when this film is just a time capsule. I mean, that's the dream, right? That's the dream, when it's something that's of a time and it can just stay in that time and doesn't feel like it resonates. But the answer is, like, I did not write this in reaction to anything that was happening. It's all coincidence. In 2013, Trayvon Martin happened. That was a coincidence. The play was already up and running when George Zimmerman got off. In 2015, when it ran in Baltimore, Freddie Gray happened. You know, it's like every time the play was getting produced, there was someone getting shot or killed. I mean, it was so constant that you lost track of the names. And I'm really looking forward to the time when it's just a moment in history.
I second that emotion for sure, for sure. I'm going to flip over to the questions because we have both of you here, and you are such wealths of knowledge, both of you, in terms of the film and the subject matter encapsulated in the film, that I'm just going to go straight to the questions because there's like a zillion of them. Regina, I know you have a lengthy background in directing television, but for your first feature film, were you looking for a small scale film like this, finding a story set mostly in one room, or did the limited setting present any unforeseen challenges? That's from Matt Brown.
Well, I wasn't looking for a particular type of first film. You know, I was in conversations with my agent about the stories that I wanted to tell as a director in film.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things that I wanted to do was I wanted to uh, uh, tell a love story with an historic backdrop, like a Titanic, you know, but with the couple being Black. And he heard me when I said that. And One Night in Miami came along. While it wasn't a romantic love story, it is in fact a love story. It is, love is part of the story. And so and it was the base. They did have an historical backdrop, you know, Cassius Clay becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. So um, that was one of the list of stories that I would like to tell. I feel like I can kind of almost check that one off. But I think more than anything, for me, once I did read One Night in Miami, one of the things that stood out was that this was an actor's piece.
Mm.
And you know, that might be a strength of mine, you know, depending on who you ask. But I knew that, again, going back to the dialogue being the star, the right actors would understand that and just embody these men, opposed to doing a characterization of these men. Because let's face it, we've seen um, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X portrayed very well, and we've seen them portrayed poorly.
Mm.
And this was going to be a moment of seeing them again, but in a very specific way, in a way, in my opinion, we had never seen or explored when we're looking at or telling stories that involve those two men. And then Jim Brown and Sam Cooke were icons as well. And here we have them all together. You know, when I go back and look at it right now, and I think about the fact that Kemp decided to write this, and that, you know, I decided to direct this, and anyone that came on board decided to be a part of it, I think it's pretty gutsy. You know, you're talking about Cassius Clay,
Jim
Jim
Brown,
Brown, Sam
Sam
Cooke,
Cooke.
Malcolm X.
Yes.
You
Those,
know,
each one of them in their own way during that time, during their time, was polarizing
yeah.
in their own way. You know, some of them a little more or less than others, but all four of them were like, they were the creme de la creme of the Black community at the time.
Yeah,
In
and
terms of
and
celebrity.
powerful men. You know, anyone
Yes,
that you ask about those men, that's one descriptive word that you would use for all four of them. But
absolutely.
yet, in Kemp's piece, it was the vulnerability that made them powerful. That makes all of us power. You know, vulnerability is strength, and so yeah. I hope I
Absolutely.
answered your question.
Yes, girl, you answered it and then some. Let's talk about this casting process. You guys cast four really great actors. You cast Aldous Hodge, Leslie Odom Jr., Kingsley Benadere, and Eli. What was your process in having these actors who are so wonderful and specific in their own ways? What was your casting process in getting those four men together, the right configuration of those four men?
Well, it was quite the casting process. You know, Kemp was there throughout
Yeah.
the entire process. We saw a lot of people. It's, you know, there's, oh gosh, there's just so many different um, thoughts that were had as we were coming along and figuring it out when we didn't have anyone. And
Mm.
then Aldous was the first person that we cast. And we did not get to see him in person. He put himself on tape. I had a conversation with him, gave him some notes, and he put himself on tape again. He was in Australia shooting a film. I think it was shooting Invisible Man, if I'm not mistaken. And uh, so having Aldous kind of became the anchor, which is really interesting because Jim
Is
is
the anchor in the
the
film.
anchor of the film.
Yeah.
So it became kind of casting with Aldous as that anchor. And uh, so while some things are, just a actor just may have obviously just given the best performance hands down with an audition. I think specifically after Aldous, there were just certain things that each of them did that made it clear that they understood the journey ahead. Um, from an artist standpoint and from a responsibility standpoint, again, because they were going to be playing these four men.
Who are real people. These are
Yeah,
real
real
people. They're
people.
not just characters. These are people, living, breathing human beings that had lives and careers and families and
And
so on.
families, exactly.
Yeah. So thank you, Regina, for answering that. Kim, Tyson Terrell wants to know, one of the things I loved in both the play and the feature was how well developed the characters were. Nobody could say those lines except for specific characters saying them. How much research did you have to go through before you knew that you could write as each one of them and get into their character?
Years. It was years. Honestly, when I first found out that that night really happened, because the night did happen, the dialogue and the situation is fictional, but
Mm.
that's February 25th, 1964. Cassius was at the Hampton House in Malcolm's room with Sam and Jim eating vanilla ice cream. And the next morning is when he said, "I'm in the Nation of Islam. Call me
Mm.
Cassius X." That's
Mm.
all real. But when I first found out about it, I started researching it with the intention of writing a book about their friendship, because I was still when I first found out about this real night, I was still a journalist.
Mm.
So, playwriting and screenwriting is my second career.
Mhm.
So this was like 10, 11 years ago. And I was like, oh, I'm going to write a book about the friendship between these four unapologetically Black men who were so unapologetic during such this dangerous time. And their friendship really blossomed during like a 3-year period between like late 1962 and early 1965. So it was like really an incredible look at what would become to me inspiration for like a nascent Black power movement. So I had years worth of research. And then when I decided to write it as a work of fiction, I saw it as a responsibility to make sure that I characterize each of these guys in a realistic way. Like Regina was saying, I wanted to focus on their humanity. I wanted to focus on their vulnerability. But often when you hear like a film and humanizing someone, it usually just means make them do something bad. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
let's see this famous person behaving so outside of who they were. But I think that we all have both a public and private version of ourselves, and while our private version of ourselves might not seem that dramatically different to us, it is dramatic to the public. So, it was really key. It's like I wouldn't have Malcolm X come into the room with strippers. You know what I mean? Like that just, and that's what I was really challenging myself to do. I wanted to be perfectly honest, as arrogant as it might sound. I wanted to challenge myself to write characterizations of each of these four men that was so on point that even people who knew them would believe that they would say and do all the things that they said and did in the film.
It was impressive because, like Regina said at the beginning, when she answered one of the first questions I asked, these men are people we know. These are our fathers, our grandfathers, our uncles, our cousins, our sons, our nephews. We know who these men are. So
Right.
you did that perfectly. It was right on point, my brother.
Yeah,
Thank you
like if
so
you
much.
having a party, right? And like, let's say you're going to have a party and you got these four guys there, you know which one's going to be the buzzkill. It's going to be Malcolm. You know what I mean? So you just fit them into any group of us gets together and we kind of fall into roles. And I just wanted to put each of these guys into their correct role, the same role that it would be if it was just me and my boys, and treat them like that, like they were just being like a bunch of boys.
This is one of the things I love about your writing, because you did the same thing with Soul. We talked when we were doing the Soul Junket about the whole barbershop scene. You always find a way to bring the culture right as it is in that moment to your work. And I, for one, wholeheartedly appreciate it and I understand it. And I'm so glad that you're out there doing it and bringing it to the masses so that they can understand it and see it and enjoy it too. So thank you so much, Kemp.
Oh, thank
Appreciate
you. Glad
that.
you
I
appreciate
really, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Seriously. Let's talk about some lighting and sound design. Jonathan says he loved the lighting and the overall look of the film. Gorgeous cinematography. Did any other films help inform or inspire the aesthetic design of One Night in Miami?
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Jonathan. Yeah, a few. Barry's Bill Street could talk. I could say that now. Absolutely. And In the Mood for Love. Those two films probably inspired the look the most. And then Jacob Lawrence as an artist, his paintings, and just for us, for Tammy, a production designer, Barry, and my wardrobe designer, Francine Jameson, that this Jacob Lawrence's work, especially this one painting that was our go back to all the time, was our color palette.
Mm.
And we stayed in that color palette. So each one of our men, even because I think Sam has like 5, 6 changes throughout the entire film, you'll see them in that color palette. If you go to any set, whether it's the Copa or if it's Fountain Blue, um, that is within that color palette. And we went as far as the paneling in the room of the Hampton House, that we brought each one of the actors to set up against 4 or 5 different panels to determine which color, which grain we were going to go with, because they were going to be in there for so long and it needed to be complementary to all of their complexions, because that's kind of also the beauty of Black people, that all of
We come in
the,
all different colors.
oh yeah, yeah.
And can I add on, just, I know it's going back to an earlier question about casting. That was one of the things I thought was so awesome, is that, Regina didn't just, she cast the core 4 based on one another, so that, when you see them as a group, they matched up really, really well to one another in terms of age, appearance, down height, everything. Like, you really kind of, just looking at the 4 of them standing against the wall, believe them before they open their mouths in the role that they would have to play. And that was something that really struck me. I don't even think Regina knows this, but in almost every casting of the stage play, the first person usually cast is Jim Brown.
Wow, really?
Oh.
No.
That's actually, for every production, that's always been the anchor around which everyone else gets cast. It's always Jim Brown first.
Look at
Wow.
that. Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Wow, that's some special and
It
powerful
is.
news, right?
Thank you for sharing that, Kemp.
Yeah.
Now I'll get to say that in
Yeah.
all the rest of the interview.
So the rest of your junkets, you can say, so Kemp said. I love that. Let's flip over to the sound design real quick. Tyson Terrell again says, I found it very intimate, the sound design, especially during the boxing scene, which is very different from what is traditional for boxing scenes. Also, not much music that I noticed until the near end of the second act. What were your thoughts as you created the soundscape? Thank you so much.
Well, there is. He's correct, Tyson. That there is not a lot of music, but again, with dialogue this powerful, I'm really not a fan of music stepping on dialogue. It rubs me kind of uneasy as an audience member. So definitely, I wouldn't be making that choice as a director with this piece especially. But part of it is also pandemic related. When it came down to doing the score, we didn't have that wonderful opportunity that you normally have, where you get to sit with your composer and have these great conversations, and then go into the studio and figure it out with artists. That was not an option for us. And so along the way, we just kind of made the discovery that let's let piano be a 5th character. Let's let because there was this, when I kind of put my playlist together, and only one song is actually in the film, but when it comes to film, I feel like probably a lot of directors can relate to, and writers as well can relate to, you have just certain songs or sounds that are inspiring, that feel like they connect to the story. And for me, Donny Hathaway and Nina Simone, just her arrangement, the bluesiness that Nina has, and a few other blues songs were part of my playlist that I put together in One Night in Miami. And one of the things that was very common in that playlist was the piano, And so we made a decision to go with pretty much piano score throughout, except for this one prayer scene where again, it's a solo instrument we use the duduk, and Benny Green flew in from Northern California and recorded all of those piano moments that take us from the first fight in London to the Copa, and from the fight from Miami to Sam pulling up, so there are, the music does become a bit of a character, so much so that, I guess maybe some may have missed it in places.
That's hilarious. You're like, well, maybe. I want to ask this question. I tried to get to, let me just say this. I tried to get to everyone's questions, and some of them were very similar, and or Regina and Kemp answered them. So if I didn't call your name out or call the question out in particular, it's because they had already answered it. I'm not dissing y'all. I'm just trying to expedite the process. So having said that, there is a question about what involvement, if any, did Jim Brown and the estates of Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and Sam Cooke have with the film?
Well, Jim Brown's daughter is actually in the film.
So that answered that.
Yes. I had conversations with May Ali, Layla Ali, and also Ambassador Shabazz. And just because I knew all of those women prior to doing the film, I just kind of wanted to let them know that I was doing this and that it would be great to have their blessing. And I understand just their fathers being who their fathers are, and how much they mean to them, let alone the rest of the world. I understand if they had any, thoughts or feelings going in. But May and Layla had actually seen the play. So they were aware of, the story that we were telling, and all of them had given me their blessing, and all of them didn't try to, they shared their honest feelings about how dear their fathers are to them. And, I assured them that my intention is not to do anything other than pay respect to the men that they are. And my conversations with Ambassador Shabazz, her being the eldest of the Malcolm's children, she definitely shared a couple little anecdotes that we ended up infusing.
Yeah, we wrote them. As soon as Regina told me, I'm like, I'm writing that right into the movie.
Yeah, and he was like, she did say it was okay. I was like, yep. Like, this is the perfect example how much Kemp and I would be on the same page. So I'm having the conversation with Ambassador Shabazz, and she's sharing this, and I'm like, oh my God, because it's a moment that I'm like, we forget that Malcolm's a father, a husband, and Kemp had already given us more than I think we've seen before, as far as just the man that's not the great orator, that's not the great motivator. And so what Ambassador had shared with us was just an extension of that. And so I immediately was like, I better ask her, is she okay with this? And I said, do you think can I include this in the film? How would you feel? She was like, sure. She said, I hate to watch films that people have access to the people that were part of those lives, and they don't talk to them. And I thought that, that was really interesting, because I think a lot of films, probably people do want to talk to the people, but financially, it doesn't really work out where they can. And she was a person that wasn't looking for money. She just was speaking to the last time I'd seen her, I was 16 years old. And last time I'd spoken to her, I was 16 years old. So she was just blessing this 16-year-old girl that now is a woman that she was proud of, and was just sharing. So,
And for those who don't know the scene, it's when Malcolm calls his daughter, that's Ambassador Shabazz. He did leave notes for her hidden in books. So I wrote that moment because it was something that she told us about.
Wow, you guys have dropped so many little kernels of nuggets and some information that I certainly didn't know going into the film or having seen it. As I told Regina right before we went live that I've seen the movie 5 times and I'll probably see it again. But unfortunately, we have to end it right now. Regina King, you are the bomb.com, and I'm speaking it into existence. This film is going to get all kinds of love this award season, and I am there for all of it. Kemp Powers, these 2 films that you have, Soul and One Night in Miami, honoring us. Brother, thank you from your Howard University Bison sister. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And thank both of you for joining us today for this film independent discussion on One Night in Miami. I am your moderator, Carla Renata, AKA the Curvy Critic. And I will see y'all next time. Bye, Regina and Kim.
bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
Curvy
having me.
Critic.